Preface. The message which comes through loud and clear from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj's final teaching is, return to what you were before your so-called birth, the emergence of a particular body with which you have identified yourself so willingly and unthinkingly. Be in that eternity, which is a state of wholeness, even though your body may be broken, a state of richness, even though you may have no earthly possessions, a state of imperturbable peace and quietude, even though the world around you may go up in flames. That state, before birth, is even now, and ever now, because it is before time itself, before time in the guise of becoming, emerged as the tyrannical concept that rules our life and enslaves us. It is the changeless reality from which all change has sprung. Space, time, the entire world of experience, and all our cherished illusions. Thus to ponder over and to take to one's heart Maharaj's wisdom as truly partaking of the nectar of the gods, because it restores to us our original pristine and blissful condition, the rediscovery of our source. Introduction. What these discourses are really about is transcendence, going beyond. And Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj is a true master at the art of transcendence. Without perceiving the actual nature of this transcendence, one can never properly understand Maharaj, because all one's efforts remain a mere intellectual activity. And one of the great pitfalls in the spiritual quest is to get stuck on a particular level, all the while thinking one has attained the final goal. The process of transcendence in this case consists of two phases. First, by thorough understanding of what one is operationally, through careful observation and contemplation, one may come to a realization of the sense of being or the consciousness of I amness in its pure state, without the slightest taint of individuality. For this consciousness is actually the universal consciousness and is realized only through transcendence of the me. Essential in this realization is the understanding of one's real identity, which has been obscured by our identification with the body. The body itself is inert and does not proclaim any identity. By identifying with the body, we are imposing limits on ourselves, where in reality there is none. Thus we are the totality in which all objects and personalities appear and disappear, but in itself is personalityless or impersonal. Upon cutting this false identification with the body, our real nature manifests as formless, bodiless, and mindless, in that which the mind is viewed as mere internal noise, or an artificial, i.e. conceptual, framework superimposed on a state of no mind, the manifest dynamic consciousness. In this state, one has no needs and demands, and so there can no longer exist any problems. It should also be seen clearly that this consciousness or beingness, the sentience which distinguishes us from a lifeless lump of flesh, has come upon us like a stranger in the night, beyond any apparent causality. Although in itself of a strictly temporal nature, and intermittent in its manifestation, it ever strives to maintain continuity in time through anchoring itself to the sense of body and the memory of the manifold experiences and conceptual images that make up the body's mental associations. The second phase of the process of transcendence is that in which even this beingness or universal consciousness is transcended. The beingness in its aspect of knowingness transcends itself, leading to the realization that one is that beingness as phenomenon or manifestation only. But fundamentally, one is not that at all. One is none of these temporal things because space-time has no reality outside our being. It has come about with the beingness as a mode of perceptual experiencing. That is, as an experiential framework which enables us to observe the essentially formless and timeless as objects in sequential manner, So what is one, then, when all the superficial and superimposed appearances have been removed? One is what always has been and always will be, timelessly the source, or the absolute which has spawned this entire relative world. On the other hand, because the beingness is strictly temporal, it cannot even support itself. It needs the support of the absolute. And so ultimately, we are that. One common problem is that we wish to reach that, when in reality we are it all the time. We think that self-realization consists in becoming aware of, know, experience, or understand the absolute. All modes of duality that apply only to the beingness. Does a fish in the ocean, in order to function, have to have a certain awareness of water? Do human beings, while living in space, need special understanding of space? Maharaj in this connection states paradoxically, whatever you understand, you are not. In non-understanding, you understand yourself. Best, therefore, simply to be, without trying to think on it. That is, without superimposing distraction as mind. What pains us particularly in this complete reversal of accepted social values? To view our ultimate reality as a kind of nothingness or emptiness, an eternal stillness, rather than continuous movement and activity towards some useful end, like standing things on our head. The point is that we live essentially for the waking state. In this state we do things as a doer, working towards our imagined security and happiness, and in the process gather ever more experiences. At the same time, the sleep state is considered an irrelevant interval, if not a waste of time, and a fearful reminder of death. But the truth is the very opposite. The waking state only is time, and all that is part of the beingness which is inevitably to be lost. So what ultimately is the use? The concept that things have an ultimate usefulness, which on the most profound level is the same as time in the absolute, must be dropped as erroneous, as Maharaj stated so pointedly. Even the highest is useless to the highest. In dreamless sleep, all the memories of the day's activities are lost, and there is then no problem at all. There is no time to pass or waste. And when we wake up, we have only the memory of a blissful state. The fact of the matter is that the waking state is only another dream, and part of the same mechanism that causes us to dream in our sleep. The twofold transcendence, as sketched above, may perhaps be further clarified by the following analogy. While looking at a motion picture, we are so taken by the apparent reality of the moving figures on the screen that we momentarily forget they are actually the shadows cast from a large number of static pictures, and that what we are really looking at is the screen only. In this observation, the screen is the only reality. All else is appearance, and therefore illusory. This analogy relates respectively to the separate individualities in our world perception and the universal consciousness or beingness. Yet ultimately this screen would not have been observed but for the light from the projector, which is what we actually perceive as reflected by the screen. Similarly, the beingness could not have manifested without the light of the Absolute. And just as the physical light itself cannot be perceived directly, but only through reflection against a surface, so the Absolute, as pure subjectivity, cannot be experienced directly but manifests as consciousness, only through its reflection against the relative world, as objectivity. Maharaj on many occasions introduces a little Hindu cosmogony when referring to whatever happens in the beingness as the action of the three gunas on the five elements and their interplay. One reason is obviously to establish a connection with these classical Hindu notions that are so familiar to the Indian portion of his audience. However, I suspect that a more important consideration is to stress the strictly impersonal nature of the world process, which absolutely does not allow for the presence of a doer. After all, if we have come about as the result of such interplay of impersonal elements, we are essentially still that only impersonal, since at no time has an individual entity been introduced except as concept. At other times, Maharaj refers to the universal consciousness as the chemical, emphasizing its inherent mechanistic character. Thus we are ineluctably led to the conclusion that everything happens by itself, and that an individual doer is totally a figment of our imagination. One could also say that a separate I would have entailed the infusion or creation of an individual soul on a fundamental level. Having understood what our real nature is, it now appears that Maharaj has miraculously transcended all theories of creationism. It should further be noted that Maharaj throughout his teachings explicitly or implicitly transcends all other dualities as well. Even the basic question whether duality or non-duality is the nature of the ultimate reality, long a bone of contention in Indian philosophical thinking. On the level of beingness or manifestation, through seeing that all divisions are unreal and that not a thing has self-nature or an intrinsic identity, one comes to the clear conviction that the ultimate reality is non-duality or Advaita. However, even this understanding becomes invalid when transcending the beingness itself on the level of the absolute or unmanifest. The absolute, being attributeless or non-qualitative, cannot be said to be even non-dual. It lies beyond both duality and non-duality. Another way to approach this problem would be to ask, who poses this question about duality or non-duality? He must himself be of the nature of duality or non-duality, as the case may be, and this renders his conclusion in the matter meaningless. Because, as Protagoras has phrased it so eloquently, man is the measure of all things. The world perception is necessarily contiguous with the nature of the perceiver. This means that the answer is already contained in the question, and so really only defines the limits of the questioner. Meditation on this point silences the questioning intellect and leads to its transcendence. The duality of theism and atheism is likewise transcended. God or gods can only be in the realm of beingness. In Maharaj's scheme of things, God is not of the highest, for even God needs the support of the Absolute. As he so often stated, for God to exist, you must be there first. Without you, God cannot exist. Finally, Maharaj transcends the separate paths of bhakti and jnana, devotion and knowledge. Both approaches can lead to the highest. It depends on one's disposition and aptitude which serves him best. But the ultimate flowering in the moment of grace is identical, the final surrender of the ego. It is an event that transcends any path and any personal attributes. Thus, Maharaj's uniqueness is perhaps the universality of his teaching, which is equally valid and pertinent to the heart-oriented and the head-oriented person, the East and the West. Chapter 1. Prior to Conception. What was I? After self-realization, does a man still have ego? He has no acquaintance whatsoever with the ego. So long as one identifies with form, the ego is there. Since a self-realized one no longer has any identification with the body form, the question simply does not arise. And what's more, of his very existence he is not even aware. That means the self-realized principle witnesses the manifest principle, which is the life force, together with the beingness. When one has no form, a person has no more problems. Not a line of the body touches him. That self-realized entity witnesses all the manifest, together with the world and also beingness. In the case of one who has self-realized, do all body actions happen spontaneously? All actions happen spontaneously. When the beingness was conceived, the body formation took place spontaneously around it. There was no question of building the body by someone. In the case of a jnani, one who is established in the Absolute, how can things happen around him for his sustenance? With a child, nature has provided parents so he can develop with their help, but the jnani has nobody around him. When the beingness was in the womb, formation of the body occurred spontaneously, did it not? Similarly, in the case of a jnani, since he is one with nature, he is nature itself. So it is the worry of nature to look after him. No personalities as such are required. Everything just happens around him. There are all these great yogis who try to live for thousands of years. They hang upside down, live on air, or just on water. What is it that interests them, and why are they living so long with so much suffering? They get some kind of satisfaction out of it. The fact that they are doing something spiritual or doing penance. They want to prolong that and feel they have a certain duty by prolonging their life in the spiritual field. On what does this beingness depend? Because of what do you survive? This life does not continue. Why? When something goes wrong with the body, it comes to an end. You are confident that you are, but what does it depend on? And through what cause does this confidence, this beingness, disappear? In the process, the beingness becomes non-being, and non-being in turn becomes spontaneously being. Now, whom should we question as to how this happens? One has to investigate oneself. You have the faith, you are. On what does it depend? Nobody investigates on these lines. Why this beingness? How am I? Why am I? On what does it depend? This aspect is never considered. People consider only the relative factors concerning the body-mind, and the area beyond that they never look into. What do you mean by death? A common word, a common parlance. This faith I am has disappeared. The confidence that I am is gone. That is death. Some people want to prolong their life. It means that they have self-love. Does it mean that they are within the limits of Maya, illusion, or have they transcended it? Once you have transcended the body idea, it does not matter whether you live a short or a long time. You do not depend on anything for your existence. Try to find out for yourself what you are, without depending on anything or anyone. Whatever you want to think or ponder over, it is something other than the you think of. You ever ponder over something which you are not? Then how to think about yourself? This you cannot do. Perceiving this clearly, you become thought-free. Whatever you do, you think about something which is not you, even with a noble thought like Iswara, God, which is still conceptual and therefore apart from yourself. Now, is it possible to think of one's own self? That is the question. You say that we should be independent of our functional being, i.e. the existence of body-mind, which I try to do, but somehow I cannot be independent of my health. You should ask questions about the subject we are dealing with. You ask gross and irrelevant questions. I am dealing with a topic where one has to ponder on oneself. There is no scope for words, concepts. Also, when there are no words, there are no thoughts. What were you doing 8 days before conception in the womb of your mother? Do you know, or do I? Explain to me the situation prior to entering the womb. How were you? Only you can say anything about that state. I do not remember, but I was beingness? Translator. Beingness comes in the womb. Beingness in a dormant condition, in the fetus in the mother's womb. Who knows about the beingness before conception? If you had been aware of the beingness before conception, you would not have cared to enter the womb. I do not remember. It is not possible because it is a non-attentive state. So where is the question of remembering? With beingness, attention starts later. Beingness comes in the womb in a dormant condition. That borderline between being and non-being is Mula Maya. Glorious names are given to it. Initially there is no attention, and suddenly attention begins. Here is a cigarette lighter. Before it came into existence, what was its name? From non-being into the being state, how was it observed? You felt that touch. Before observing anything, we feel the touch of I am. To realize that state prior to conception, that eternal state, whatever that state is, to abide in that, is the highest. Now, for your sake, I attach a name to it, the Parabrahman state, the Absolute. Before conception? Before conception. Whatever state exists, that is your most natural, perfect state. It always prevails. When this beingness goes, that state will still be there. It ever prevails. The state in which you were 8 days prior to conception and millions of years back, whatever it was, that state prevails, and now also it does. And after the departure of beingness, it still prevails. Because of my present state of health, I am not inclined to talk much. Dealing only with this topic, only a rare person will understand what I am driving at. When someone asks me some gross questions, do you expect me to come down to that level and explain all details as if in a kindergarten class? I have some very strange questions. Before my birth, at my conception, who pulled me into the womb? My father, my mother, and in what form? That would be a possibility provided I had a certain form, color, design, prior to conception. Then only could I have been pulled inside. The one who has solved this riddle comes to the conclusion that this beingness and this entire manifest world is unreal. There is no need for knowledge when this beingness was not. When even great gods like Brahma and Vishnu were confronted with this puzzle, they closed their eyes and went into samadhi and just disappeared. They did nothing? What could they do? At present you feel you are, because of the association with the vital breath. Because the vital breath is operating, you know you are. When the association is not there, what can you do? Can you actually do anything? What can I do to acquire knowledge? Do nothing except hold on to yourself. Just be in that beingness. Then it will tell you how beingness turns into non-beingness. Therefore I tell you just one thing. Catch hold of that touch of I amness only, that beingness, dwell on it, and contemplate on that only. The best thing to do is to be there in that I am state, to be is meditation. There is no be there, just be. Is it possible the whole day, any special meditation? Who says for the whole day? Who else can say for the whole day except the beingness? It can capture everything in this contemplation, but it cannot capture itself. Is karma a problem which we create? The one which has created you has created this karma and the problems of karma, so that you involve yourself in it. Who has created you? What do you mean by karma? It is movement, activity. As long as one is subject to karma, one encounters it and it appears as something real. But is it not actually an illusion? I try to keep you trapped as though you were in the womb. If you listen to me carefully and quietly, everything will be sprouting. It is a common mistake, a blunder, that we have become identified with the body form. The last mistake? The first and the last. Again, remember the words which I have spoken earlier. The seed which has created this body and everything else, so long as it is alive, moist. You will explain these words. Once that seed is gone, you are in eternity only, in your eternal state. Out of a very small seed, a very big tree grows into the sky. Similarly, this small seed, this beingness, I amness touch, out of that seed all this manifest world is created. At this point there is no energy left in the words, therefore you cannot further express it verbally. My ego, my body, the other bodies of egos here in this room, what they are hearing are all concepts, movements in this beingness. Is this correct? Yes, if you want to understand more clearly, take the example of a dream, your dream. Since I am touching on the highest aspects of knowledge, I am not in a position to reply to any gross questions. If somebody talks or asks questions, I am not going to challenge him because to him, from his standpoint and from his level, these are correct questions. Right now, if I have to be interested in a state at all, it is that state 8 days prior to conception, the Parabrahman state. Yesterday the word ego was used, as also today. On what level is this ego attached, and when? Everything is most sacred and most unsacred. The question of sacred and unsacred is there so long as that beingness is there. If the beingness is not, where is the question of sacredness or non-sacredness? You meet some persons and call them very knowledgeable. They will tell you that in the next birth you will be a great king, and in the birth after that a still greater king. When such advice is given, the listener is very happy, very contented. Self-love is the underlying illusion. But nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to give up his beingness, his I am knowledge. Suppose the following question is directed to an intelligent person. Prior to conception, how were you? This person would reply as follows. I was in a dormant condition in the essences of my parents. That would be how a smart person would reply. It is, however, based on the conventional outlook, and if you trace it further to the parents' parents, etc., you will have an infinite regression on your hands. Therefore, this principle, which has no form but is only knowledge in a dormant condition, if you trace it to its source, it goes back to eternity. That is why the principle is eternal. Now I will give you 2 clues for further investigation. One is to establish yourself in that state prior to conception, and the other is that you wrap yourself up in the traditional concept of the parents. In the latter case, you will fail to get a good grip on the true nature of yourself. The conventional knowledge is not destroyed, but there is no need for it because, basically, it is unreal. It is untruth. Whatever an ignorant child or an accomplished sage says, both are correct. I can give you another concept. Who is the perfect principle or the personality that existed prior to the birth of anybody? Here again is a similarity between a child in the cradle and a perfect jnani. When a child tastes food, he does not know whether it is urine or fecal matter, food or milk. All these things have the same taste for him. How does the child know himself in that state? Only he knows. Now what do you want to say about the child and the jnani? I believe it is important to become a child to drop all the attachments. Where is the question of giving up, renouncing everything? It has come about spontaneously. You do not have to throw out anything. You have to understand only. You are compelled to suffer or experience only because of the appearance of the beingness. Did you go and catch hold of the beingness? It has come about spontaneously. Is the child catching hold of something? Has he caught any concepts, ideas, or an ego? A jnani, having understood this state of beingness and all its play, has transcended it and abides in the state prior to conception. He dwells ever in that perfect state, whether the beingness appears or disappears. During your life you have accomplished so many things, and you had so many identities, and all these identities and that understanding have left you. Finally, with what identity will you die? If you have understood what you really are, is there any necessity for spiritual pursuits? In reality, no. I ask myself why I am here. What is the reason? I know only too well there is ignorance in me. I think the reason I came here is to get help to destroy that ignorance. Your ignorance is gone. Now describe what you mean by ignorance. I do not perceive it clearly enough, although I see many things. Sometimes I have problems. I think it is because of my ignorance. The waking state, sleep, beingness, all this experience combined is ignorance only. That ignorance, termed as birth, means these 3. Once you know this, you can do anything. You are free. When you know the false is false, then you do not have to worship at all. Any idea of doership, that things happen because you do something, also goes away. Prior to the appearance of this beingness, you were purely Parabrahman, the Absolute. The jnani does not give importance to this waking, sleeping, and beingness, just as you are not afraid of a serpent made out of rubber. So, in a similar way, the jnani has no interest in this waking state and beingness. Is it all the same? Will you make use of this knowledge to see and affirm it as false? Need you make any effort? You can see anything without effort. Once you know the ignorance, then there is no effort, because you have dismissed it as ignorance, and there is no registration of it for future reference. What are you suffering or experiencing? The name of this body form and its associations and that beingness. If you ponder over it, you will have the instant solution. You have talked about the state of conception, also that we are in the eternal Parabrahman state. But what is karma? Is it a variant of that eternal state? There is no karma in the state of Parabrahman. Where's the question of karma? But you are talking about conception, body-mind. Who has entered the body-mind form? I? We? Now the space has entered in this room. The space is there. Why and how has the space entered this room? At first there was no space, no time. The space is outside. The space is here also. There is no distinction between outside and inside space. It is all space only. So where is the question of coming and going? January 8th, 1980. Chapter 2. The Emergence of Beingness. I feel that Christianity leads from body-mind to consciousness, but does not go beyond it. Regarding Christ, Krishna, or any other prophet, please understand one point clearly. When they became embodied, the raw material and equipment which went into the process were the 5 elements only. Further, the beingness which emerged out of those embodied forms was an outcome of the interactions of these 5 elements. It expressed itself through the 3 gunas, and lasted only so long as the 5 elemental food essence was available. And when the beingness disappeared, these saviors did not know their existence nor their performance in their embodied state. When and how does one first have the experience of the world? This experience becomes possible only after the emergence of the beingness out of the 5 elemental food essence body. Now this beingness is something like a telescope. An observer views the sun, moon, stars, etc. through the telescope. But the observer is neither the telescope nor its field of observation. Similarly, witnessing of the 5 elemental manifest world in cosmos happens to the Absolute, that is, to the unborn eternal principle called the Parabrahman. But the Absolute, the witness, is not beingness, the medium of witnessing, and is also not the manifest universe witnessed. Now a question. 10 days prior to your conception, what were you doing? Only observing. This reply is incorrect. From what standpoint do you talk? I want to nail you down to the point of the telescope. I bring you down to the beingness, but you digress. About which telescope did I talk to you? Right now, which is that telescope? It is made up of something, it has emerged out of something. Instead of concentrating on this point, you are babbling about this and that, and consider yourself knowledgeable. Is it not a telescope through which you experience and observe the world? But you, the Absolute, are not the telescope, are you? Better stay put here at this point in the beingness. But you jump here and there, leaving your standpoint. Then how will you get peace? That is the whole name and game of life. With your present attitude, no amount of knowledge will bring you peace. The beingness is given innumerable names and titles. It took 9 months to create this telescope, this beingness, out of the 5 elements. Do you ever ponder over this? With that telescope, all this is experienced and seen, but the observer is not the telescope. In Lord Krishna's statement, there was never a time when I was not. Through the telescope, that is the beingness, which is the expression of the observer only. He witnesses the manifest world. But do you think that the observer has also disappeared when the telescope and field of observation are gone? To say that an object exists, there should be 2 conditions. One is the object, and the other is the observer of the object, who says the object is. The primary quality of beingness is the sense of I amness. Therefore, there arises a multiplicity of qualities, but the observer, the Absolute, is totally free from any qualities. Therefore, it is called nirguna, which means non-qualitative, attributeless, etc. You agreed that Krishna could not make any statement when he was not in body form because there was no one to make it. Certainly, because Krishna in the absolute state has no instrument with which to make a statement, and to whom. Once you realize that all these goings-on are the products and play of the five elements in the realm of the beingness, you remain unaffected by it and apart from it. My attention is only on the medium by which I know, I am, and by which I experience the world. I pay no attention to the siddhi powers in anything that appears. The only relevant question is, how did this medium happen to be? Visitors come here with acquired knowledge and they expect me to comment on it. How can I? They are already clogged up with that knowledge, so let them fend for themselves. A dead man does not interfere with the affairs of a live one. Similarly, the one who has understood and realized beingness is not interested in the activities and happenings within the domain of beingness. Here, we are discussing knowledge that transcends the beingness. But in the world, who is really interested in such profound knowledge? It is a great privilege that you are inclined to listen to such talks. Many people would not care for the talks in spite of the opportunities. There is a story of a Zen master. When a disciple visited him, the master shouted, "Why have you come? Are you not dead yet?" Also, Ramana Maharshi has said that the mind should be totally killed. Throw out all your talking concepts and words. After all, what is the mind? It is just the noise that goes on inside. With waking begins the chattering, and the talk goes on endlessly thereafter. This is your mind, and you run after it. Your breath itself is the talk. If the breath stops, there can be no talk. As I reflect on the matter, I find that love and truth are the same, and I also understand the realization of love is quite beyond the mind. All this talk is at the mind level, but I do not talk from the standpoint of the individual, but from the level of total manifestation. An individual understands himself through certain concepts and accordingly undergoes pleasure and pain. But in actuality, this is not so. The mind which interprets happiness and unhappiness is meant for conducting affairs in the world. The rituals of worship, such as waving of lights, that is, arati, and singing of bhajans, are necessary to keep alive our fervor for God and to prevent drabness. What is the meaning of arati as you understand it? Special love. In the Marathi language, arati means special need. This special need is the love that every animal has for itself. It is that love to be that prompts each animal to carry on activities in the world. It is the inborn nature of all the species. Because of the identification of each species with its own kind, the idea of otherness springs up, and it is this otherness which is the root cause of pleasure and pain. Love to be is the self-love. Who does not love himself? This very love is called Atma-prem, or self-love. Because a human being considers himself an individual, he suffers pain and pleasure. Only in the state of consciousness there is no such question of happiness or unhappiness. These are experienced only at the body-mind level. I have transcended this state of body-mind, that is the individual state, and I am talking to you from the dynamic manifest consciousness. The very concept that good or bad is going to happen is completely wiped out of me. Also, I do not have any concepts regarding birth and death. My physical condition is so weak, any other person in such a state would not even be able to get up. Total loss of pride in individuality is my nirvana. That is the state of non-identity. You carry out all your worldly and spiritual activities with an identity. So long as your individuality is not lost, you will be bothered by pleasure and pain, past and future, birth and death, etc. Have you ever thought along these lines? Who asked this question? I, the formless, the dynamic manifest consciousness, am asking you. Why do you suffer pain? You have compressed yourself into a form and an identity, hence the suffering. You pursue spirituality from the same limited conditioned standpoint, and hence you cannot secure any foothold in these pursuits. In whatever subject you are absorbed, you deal with it from the standpoint of a personalized entity, and not as a dynamic, manifest consciousness. The knowledge that you are is manifest and all-pervading. It is purer and subtler than this light, and therefore it cognizes light. Since you hold on to the individualistic memory, you are unable to digest this knowledge, and so you have no peace. There are any number of hatha yogins, as well as persons who recite holy names, doing japa, and those who practice austerities, tapa. Ostensibly, many of them are on the spiritual path, but they rest content with the acquisition of siddhi powers for indulging in miracles. They cannot make progress towards real spiritual knowledge, and they pride themselves on their particular systems, the powers acquired and their individualities. This is not spiritual knowledge at all. A person in service should either be satisfied with his meager salary or quit his job. Similarly, a jnani should be satisfied with the three states of waking, deep sleep, and knowingness, or quit them. I, as a jnani, am telling you my story. What is the use of this alternation of deep sleep and waking to me? I do not want it. This perceptible universe is limitless and infinite. By preserving it, what shall I gain? Since a realized sage abides in perfection, he has no need at all to gain anything. However, a seeker will obtain millionfold benefits by merely remembering and dwelling upon the life of the sage. So great is its potential. An ordinary person cannot even have a glimpse or inkling of the absolute state of a jnani. He has to be satisfied with the behavior and physical expression of the jnani, evidenced as an outcome of his beingness. Such a sage, however, is neither the bodily expression nor the beingness. For example, a military officer wears a uniform with appurtenances which denote his rank. All this makes up the officer, but the uniform and the appurtenances are not the officer. Thus, your body, which is a food packet, is not you, but the indwelling principle of you-are-ness in the body is that you in essence. You are not able to give up your identity with the body. That is the great Maya, the illusion. Therefore you do not imbibe what I say. How does a jnani know that he is realized? When he recognizes his knowingness, which is the sense of I am. Right here and now, you are in the realized state. But you try to judge it through desires and mind concepts. Hence your inability to apperceive it and abide in it. In the jnani state, there is no need for anything, not even to know oneself. You are attached to the body senses. Therefore, even though you may attain an age of 100 years, you still would crave for more years. Sir, you do not feel sorry and concerned for us ignorant seekers who visit? Why should I? I am the very son of knowledge and look upon everybody as such. What is the significance of astrology, stars, good luck, and bad luck? Everything is important at the appropriate place. The one who has not recognized his true identity will naturally be after the significance of astrology, stars, luck, and so on. But for the one stabilized in the self, nothing is important and significant. Such a one is not concerned with anything. The absolute state is said to be eternal. How is it that out of such a state of eternity, an ephemeral and temporary state like beingness should arise? For the appearance of such a temporary state there must be a cause. For example, there are two intimate friends who are in harmony with each other, but suddenly they start a quarrel. There must be some cause for this, some friction, some misunderstanding. Similarly, there must have been some cause to give rise to the 5 elements and the manifest universe out of the absolute state. This primary cause is beyond explanation. Just as the friends were separated by their differences and friction, the primary elements, space, air, fire, water, and earth, were formed out of the highest as a result of friction and interaction. As the process continued, a variety of forms were created, leading to the vegetable and animal kingdoms. In the vegetable kingdom, termed Vanaspati, we find shrubs, plants, trees, etc., which grow in one place and do not move about. The next stage of evolution is termed Vachaspati, the animal kingdom, which abounds in germs, worms, animals, and human beings. These species have the privilege of movement and communication. Human beings, though biologically animals, are a superior species and are termed Brihaspati. Because of the highly evolved indwelling principle, which is consciousness, a human being is able to acquire wisdom intuitively and transcend itself into the highest. During the process, his consciousness, initially conditioned to the body-mind, develops into the universal consciousness, amply justifying the title Brihaspati. This means Lord of the immense magnitude, connoting the all-pervading principle. Ultimately, the universal consciousness subsides into the absolute. Is there any physical pain when the vital breath leaves the body? One who is involved with concepts suffers at the time of death. The intensity of suffering is in accordance with the meaning of concepts held on to. One who is devoted to God and free from concepts dies happily and peacefully as though going into a slumber. Do you suffer when you fall into sleep? The poet sage Tukaram mentioned in one of his poems that vegetation is our kith and kin, and it is also our ancestor. But how could it be otherwise when vegetable essence is an absolute necessity for the creation of the animal kingdom, the Vachaspati family, and also the Brihaspati family of the human species? The gods in the heaven have to take a human form to manifest on the earth, and their bodies have to be sustained and nourished on the vegetable essence. To reach the godly state, one must have a human body and consciousness. To abide in the highest state, you have to do nothing else but listen to these talks carefully, and then everything will happen correctly, conducive to your spiritual progress. Now, I have told you about the beingness, which is the outcome of the 5 elemental play and the result of the food essence body. But you, as the Absolute, are not the body, and not even the indwelling beingness. Then why should you worry about its departure? Since we are born, we are going to die? A Yoni is not born and he does not die. But when the body of a Yoni drops off, people around him may weep in sorrow because they identify with their bodies. They therefore consider a Yoni to be an embodied person, which, however, he is not. How is it that a Yoni abiding in the non-knowing state is able to communicate with us? A Yoni is so called because he is in possession of Jnana, the beingness, which is sustained by a body. While in possession of Jnana, a Yoni is in the non-knowing, absolute state. The beingness and the body are the media of communication for a Yoni, but he is not the language expressed for communication. You too could be in the Yoni state provided you recede and abide in a state prior to emanation of words in you. Such a state is revealed at the borderline of deep sleep and waking state, which is the very beginning of emergence of the consciousness. This state is known as the Parashakti or Paravani state, which is the source of words or language. From this source, which is the first stage, until it finally explodes out of the mouth for communication, the language has to pass through 3 more stages, that is, 4 stages in all. The second is Pasyanti, the incipient stage, where the intangible formation of language begins. The third stage is the madhyama, or the middle stage, in which the tangible formation of language takes place in the zone of the mind. The fourth and last stage is Vekhari, when the breath causes the language to explode from the mouth into vocal expression. Paravani is the subtlest form of language. This term has a deeper connotation. Para means the other, indicating separateness from the absolute state, but the closest to it. Ayani, or Lord Krishna, says, "I am not the Paravani, because they abide in the highest." When I talk about Krishna, do not take him to be a personality. He is the absolute. One feels one has understood when some concept, title, or name like Krishna is given. But that is not the way. One has to be Krishna to understand him truly. Paravani is not the language of the Absolute, as it is still an outcome of the beingness. After passing through various stages of development, it finally expresses vocally a concept, which on our acceptance possesses us. In the process, we identify totally with the concept and lose our true identity. Once in meditation, I stabilized in the Paravani state prior to mind and saw visions of the past and future. In the Paravani state, one gets siddhi powers and can read the past and future. It also leads to the awakening of the Kundalini energy. January 9, 1980. Chapter 3. Time is the child of a barren woman. What is the difference between physical suffering and psychological suffering? When there is disorder in the body, suffering is physical. But when there is disturbance due to thoughts and concepts, the suffering is psychological. Have you any idea when all this began? I do not know. It is spontaneous and it is inside. But how and when was registration made of the first day of life? From death, birth took place. Prior to that, there was no consciousness. To what was this title of birth given? Just look into that. What is really born? A concept is born. Even to say that a concept is born is not the full truth. What did actually happen? Time and space appeared. You will have to do plenty of dhyana yoga to come up with a correct reply. There are any number of Upanishads and yogas like Hatha Yoga, Patanjali Yoga, and others. But I know only Atma Yoga, which is self-knowledge and nothing else. Out of a common heap of wheat, many types of edibles are prepared, using different methods. In the same way, there are many systems of spirituality. I am not interested in nibbling at the various delicacies, methods, and techniques, but only in the main course, which is the primordial source of all existence. How and why did the state of my beingness, my existence, and the entire manifestation arise, and out of what? In that original source there is no feeling of my presence. To that ultimate source, how did the state of existence resulting in differentiation, duality, happen? The Upanishads and various systems of yoga are conceptual fantasies. I did not go into all these at all. I inquired only about my non-beingness and beingness, and how and why they did come about. That I am born is itself. But this is a concept which you have accepted. It is hearsay. Every moment we are born. Yes, every moment births take place, but what is that material which is born? Whatever that may be, on the non-beingness, beingness has appeared. And in this beingness, thousands of births and life forms are created within a moment. But the background of all this is nothingness only. There should also be a knower of this nothingness, and this knower is nothingness too. In the non-beingness, how could that be expressed, and who would? In that state, there is no subject and no object. It is called nirvisaya, but in the beingness state, both subject and object are there. Hence, it is called savisaya. Have you understood that Patanjali Yoga deals with duality? Have you studied the yoga? Does it deal with yoking or unyoking? I have read a little. The yoga deals with duality. Out of what did Patanjali create duality? When he established duality, what did he divide? Whatever he divided, was it not in the realm of beingness, in the sphere of subject-object? The moment one tries to divide something, it becomes objective. But the ultimate principle is prior to the sphere of subject-object. I would like to know how you divide that state. On the state of non-beingness, the beingness appeared together with manifestation, creating a feeling as if I am. Who is that is not important. Only I am is important. We talked about duality. Did it begin with the appearance of beingness or non-beingness? Or has it developed later? It is simple. When the beingness, that is the I amness, is felt, it is obvious that quality has begun. Later the beingness manifests as multiplicity, functioning as it does through innumerable forms. The initial humming of the beingness as I am, is the duality. But who accepts the duality? The non-beingness accepts duality with the beingness, the absolute non-being state, by assuming the being state, becomes dual in manifestation. Words create duality between us. Two persons are sitting quietly and there is no quarrel, but the moment they start talking, duality begins. When the non-being state expresses objectivity through the being state, the latter is called Maya, the female aspect, while the non-being state is considered the male aspect. Therefore, the functioning of the manifest universe is called the play of Prakriti and Purusha, that is, the female and male aspects. I was trying to follow a path through which this beingness could experience the non-beingness, which amounts to the manifest experiencing the unmanifest. Right from the start, we must understand its impossibility. I have been telling you the same thing. You should do plenty of deep meditation. The beingness should totally merge in the non-being state. Every day I get rid of my stress and strain when going into deep sleep. In this way I forget myself, undergoing oblivion and relaxation. Thus the beingness should be lost in the non-beingness. When the dhyana yoga is done correctly, the beingness dissolves gradually into non-beingness. In the intermediate state between deep sleep and waking, a dream vista presents itself. Similarly, in deep meditation, all the necessary wisdom is revealed to you. After understanding all this and realizing that the manifest world is unreal, do you still consider yourself a personality? The beingness state is the manifest state. It is not individualistic. It is made up of the 5 elements, 3 gunas, and Prakriti Purusha, the female and male principle. The beingness later merges into non-beingness. That is why I say my process is Atma Yoga, which means abidance in the self. When the non-being state became the being state, the world, along with so many things, came into existence. As per my guru's directive, I became one with the beingness. Beingness means having the vision that one is the entire dynamic universe. When one transcends individuality, one is the manifest beingness only. In this process, the unmanifest reveals itself. This is what Maharaj calls meditation, that is to remain in the state of beingness. There is no creator and nobody created me. The creator is already the manifest. First we need the sense of being before we become the creator. The creation takes place through his mind and concepts. Through the humming in his mind, his world is created. Even if you are alone, your mental blabbering and chattering go on. Also, the mind is created. Yes, but when? When the non-being turns into being, then only the mind appears and functions. Only a very rare person, 1 in a million, will take the correct delivery of my talks. Once the delivery is taken, there is no person. There is no question of yours or mine. In the ocean of my manifestation, millions like you are crawling around, like waves and ripples. With the exception of a guru, all others are ripples. But what is a guru? Is he a material sustained on a piece of bread? It is another word for the indescribable. My guru told me that first I, as an individual, should accept a guru, and that the guru would lead me initially to the manifest and then to the unmanifest. But the guru is the manifest state. If you accept individuality, you will not make progress. You must identify with the manifest totality from the first moment of daybreak. The light of complete clarity is flooding all around. In this way you identify with the manifest as a whole. You are all-pervading. On the other hand, if you hold on to an individual entity, you cannot progress. Since death is inevitable, why should I not abide by the directive of my guru? By following him implicitly, effortlessly, and spontaneously, the manifest becomes the unmanifest. Beingness merges in the non-beingness. Unmanifest means total quietude and rest. Then there is no birth and death, no coming and going. Worldly activities are not possible without the humming of beingness. Individuality and manifestation are the outcome of the non-being state turning into beingness, like the waking of a person from deep slumber. A person in deep sleep and the person fully awake are one and the same. The one who sleeps is always the one who wakes up. The waking state is another word for the world. Waking means total world manifestation. When he is awakened, he always goes back to dualism. Because I talk to you, you continue to talk to me. If you know any earnest person, bring him here also. Very rarely I tell somebody to come here. Once or twice I have done so. I like people who are eager to understand. I throw out anybody who likes only to argue for the sake of arguing. I ever abide in the unmanifest, but everything happens due to the power of Yogamaya, the beingness, which is also the manifest state. The great Marathi poet refers to the unmanifest state in his poems and brings out the following. Just think of a barren woman, untouched by anyone, who conceives and delivers a child. In the same manner the Yogamaya has delivered the manifest world. That is, the beingness which is the outcome of the food essence body has projected this manifestation, and it is the image of my guru. The unmanifest and the manifest, the Yogamaya, can never be together. A person translated the book I Am That into a foreign language, and he wants to give it the title of Tattvamasi. I do not like that. Either keep the title I Am That or none at all. But Mr. Maurice Friedman had agreed. I do not agree, and also do not dilute the contents of the book with your understanding, even though you may consider yourself a Yanni. Do it the same way Friedman did. The exact and original text should be translated with no modifications. I now realize after meditation that the essence of your teachings is contained in I Am That. If you want to realize the meaning of I Am That, go into deep meditation, but you, the manifest, should merge in you, the unmanifest. That is the ultimate meaning. Whatever experience I get of the world and God is not due to any favor or obligation of God, but is entirely due to me, because of my state. If I were not, I would not have had the experience. I did prevail and do prevail always. Because of my beingness, I experienced the world. I now see clearly the oneness in the teachings of three seers or acharyas, Shankara, Madhava, and Ramanuja. All the creations emanate from the Mula Maya, the primary illusion and its secret humming. All words, talks, and titles refer to those emanations. Similarly, all these images are the chatterings and expressions of somebody. The images are the products of the love talk and coming together of two persons. The state of beingness is termed as God. The godly state is the entire manifestation. It is my state in experiencing. It is duality. But my unmanifest state is non-dual, and in that state there is no experiencing and manifestation. I, the Absolute, am not the state of being. In spite of all the spiritual knowledge, you are not inclined to give up the experiences at the body-mind level. If you do not identify with the body-mind sense, you will transcend into the beingness first, and later you will transcend even the beingness. However, you want to keep your individuality at the body-mind level as well as experience, and be in both the beingness and non-beingness states, which is impossible. I, the Absolute, am the witness of my beingness, which is the total manifestation. This state is being glorified with very high attributes, such as God, Maheshwar, etc., and worshipped by many people. To them, such a talk of mine may smack of mischief. If I say I am not that, then there is also I am that. Experience does not mean the experiencer. The experiencer is experienced. The experiencer is an object but is taken for a subject. I experience you and I am is an object but is treated as a subject. Is it an illusion to see an object as subject? If you say you talk, you are a liar. All this talk of yours is intellectual only in reply to my talk. Do you directly practice what you talk? It is practice. I have been looking everywhere for an I. Wherever I go in search of me, I am not there. I is not the word I, it is everything. I as an individual am not able to get to that everything. I do not accuse anyone of being a personality. You identify yourself as an individual. Fear of death does not allow you to transcend into beingness. Only the false wants to continue as the false. I, the Absolute, am not the personal I. The personal I cannot tolerate the impersonal beingness and is afraid of death. The factual eternal I, the Absolute, has no fear of death. That which you want to sustain, nourish, and maintain by 5 elemental stuff is not you. Since you identify with something unreal, there is a fear of death. You, the Absolute, are not the personal you. But for all the 24 hours, the personal entity you is watched, nourished, and protected so that it may continue on and on. In short, you watch, nourish, protect, and guard that which you are not in actuality. When you meet a lion, you have 2 alternatives. Either you run away or you allow yourself to be eaten by it. There is a third alternative. You threaten the lion, since either way it is going to kill you. So why die like a coward out of fear? Attack it bravely and knock out some of its teeth. One who is afraid of time becomes a prey of time, but time itself becomes a prey of that one who is not afraid of it. One who transcends time, the beingness and its attributes, abides in the Absolute. A yoni consumes time continuously, while all others are being devoured by it. A yoni is beyond time, the 5 elements, attributes, and emotions. We have to be very careful that we do not set up something as real that one intends to consume. You presume to be a yoni, but you are filled up with so much stuff. To fear time is like fearing an unborn child. I did not state that I consider myself to be a yoni. Time is the child of a barren woman. Maharaj is pointing to the visitor and another person. Both of you are eminent personalities known for spirituality, and you have come well armed to attack me. But I tell you, you cannot locate me. Why am I not afraid of time? Because even the dissolution of this manifest universe, the Brahman, cannot destroy me. Prior to, during, and after the dissolution, I, the Absolute, ever prevail, untouched, untainted, and unchanged. While dying, with what identity will you die? If you are certain of your death, why suffer a lowly death? Die nobly and honorably. Before death, be the highest, be the infinite, the Absolute. January 14th, 1980. Chapter 4. Nothing ever interferes with the five elemental play. What is ego? Why does it think about itself all the time? First, you have what is called aham bhava, that is the I am sense. Later, this sense identifies with the form of a body, when it is called aham akar, the I am form. This is ego. Why does it not disappear in people? They feel they are doers and they want to be loved? It is the natural outcome of the three gunas. While the body is the product of food essence, it is the medium through which all these three gunas function. Ego is the very nature of these gunas. While a man thinks that he is the doer, even though he does no action, in reality all activities are due to the gunas. Only a jnani realizes this and transcends the ego. The ego is never a title or a name, but just the sense of I am prior to words. The waking state, the sleep state, and the knowingness I am constitute an ego. In the essence of these three states, what do you think you are? What would be the evidence for your existence? Could ego not be due to thoughts? These three states are the natural outcome of the beingness or I amness. One who recognizes beingness transcends all the three gunas, namely sattva, consciousness, rajas, dynamic quality, and tamas, claiming doership. But for the manifestation of consciousness, a food body is absolutely necessary. Without such a body there cannot be consciousness, the three gunas, nor even the three states, waking, sleep, and knowingness. Do you refer to consciousness as mental consciousness? Where does the mind come in when we talk about the three states? Without waking, deep sleep, and knowingness, where is the mind? You do not know you are without consciousness. Could it be then that thoughts appear in consciousness? Just like this incense stick, yes, when the incense stick burns, the fragrance will be there. What do you mean by birth? It means birth of the waking state, deep sleep, and knowingness. But the material for this birth is the quintessence of the food body. If you have any questions, by all means ask, but who will take care of your questions if you are not? If you are not, where can be your questions, even those relating to your birth and death? Birth happens only to the body. But when you refer to the body, is it not the quintessence of the food essence? What causes the ego to expand, sometimes with age and with the deterioration of the body, as in paranoids? Ego seems to increase with age. But of what is ego the product? Whatever experience you undergo, it is the product of beingness, and beingness is the outcome of food. From food is derived the body form, and from the body essence is derived the birth. What else do you want? With the appearance of beingness, the title of birth is given to you. That is, you are accused of having been born. With such replies, your questions and talk lose all significance. Now tell me, who is talking? Are you doing the talking, or is it the quality of beingness that is talking? There never is an I that is talking. You still do not grasp what I say. The seat of world experience is the beingness. Where is the I in all this? Talking is done by the beingness, but it is dependent upon the body essence, which is the product of food. When the food essence in the body loses its quality, beingness becomes weak and death is feared. Use any words you like, but express yourself. You have written books, but what information did you give in them? I am or I am not relates to the beingness. All the words are spoken by the beingness. If the sense I am is not, which means if the beingness is not, who is there to say I am? I never had the idea that I was writing a book. What is the use of discussing with you? There is no point in your denying what I said. What are you, and what could you be without the three states, waking, deep sleep, and the knowingness I am? Therefore I deny that I am doing anything. But there appears to be some assertiveness in your talking. Please do not try to talk merely for the sake of talking. If you would quietly listen, everything will be revealed. When anybody comes here, I know that the person does not have an iota of knowledge. People bring me presents, but this is a disease and I am not into that. Similarly, in our life, physical and spiritual disciplines and rituals are prescribed, but I am ever out of these conditionings. This is absolutely clear to me. This Chinese carpet, said to be worth more than 400,000 rupees, has been presented to me, but I have no feelings about it at all. Similarly, I am not the least concerned with the so-called birth imposed on me. The birth relates to the three gunas, the three states, and the beingness, and I am not all that. I use the carpet, but I am not the carpet. In the same way, I use the beingness. Persons visiting this place fall at my feet out of respect, but the respect is shown to the quality of beingness, and I am unapproachable. All this spiritual knowledge pertains to the realm of beingness, and it is bound to go like a guest. The question is, where, when, and how will you have the ultimate knowledge? Who has this ultimate knowledge? Nobody has the self-knowledge. The knowledge I am is not the absolute state. The beingness, comprising the three gunas, is given the godly titles of Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, and Mahesh is the destroyer. And the combination of these three gods is worshipped and praised by us when singing bhajans. But all these gods subside and go to rest in a self-realized sage, termed as Jnani. The state of a Jnani transcends the sense of time and even the sublime emotions. That highest state is given the title of Parabrahman, Paramatman, etc. After reading spiritual books, people argue over their interpretation, but what is the point of such quarrels? All these talks go on in the realm of beingness, and you, the ultimate, are not the beingness. Yesterday, Maharaj asked me to meditate on when the beingness appeared. Questions could also be asked about the state after the appearance of beingness, such as why, when, how, and so forth. Yes, these questions can only be asked after the beingness appears, and the beingness will remain so long as the food essence is available. Why and when does a person die? When the food essence is not supplied. Function of the person's body ceases, and the indwelling beingness disappears. This is called death. But who did die? One object died. But who says this? Can it be the one who died? If not, who says it? You can see it from day to day, that this beingness appears and disappears. Something else must be there. The ultimate seer cannot see by seeing, but without seeing, the seer sees. But that ultimate seer does not belong to the realm of the beingness. It appears to me that seeing itself is seen. But what is the cause of this? It is the beingness only, the three-aspected sattva guna. If you do not understand, please keep quiet. The Absolute cannot be understood. Whatever you understand, you are not that. In non-understanding, you understand yourself. Then how can the three gunas be responsible for the witnessing? Addressing a new visitor with the beard. You have grown and maintained a beard like a Mahatma. Come on, ask questions. You talked about a Jnani. Does he think? Can he be without feelings? For the purpose of communicating, he has to employ such words as the Jnani is thinking or the Jnani is talking, etc. But actually nothing of the sort is there. It is reassuring that he talks about thinking and that he is feeling. The Jnani is beyond the attributes of the three gunas and is beyond emotions. How can a Jnani be involved in thinking and emotions? I see a difference between thinking and emotions. By feelings, I mean those which are like the stream of a river. They come and go. Yes, this appearance and disappearance of the feelings and emotions is the very nature of the three gunas, and not yours. I understand this as a natural flow of the gunas and nothing of the Absolute. You are convinced about nothingness, but of whom? Are you convinced that a Jnani is nothing or the knowledge I am is nothing? The knowledge I am is nothing. That knowledge is like a guest. It comes and goes. You have come here. You are very clever. Now, what did happen? All the knowledge which you had collected elsewhere and brought here is rendered useless and redundant. Pointing to two visitors. The knowledge of these two will become useless. At present they are the very ocean of knowledge, but when their three gunas and beingness disappear, all their knowledge also disappears. So long as beingness is there, all the worldly activities will go on. But you now realize that you are neither the activities in the beingness nor the beingness. You, as the Absolute, are none of these. To meditate on that which comes after the beingness, the only way I see it is to watch what remains when everything is gone. When time, space, and everything disappear, what remains? When the manifest world of the three gunas is gone, whatever remains indicates what you were 100 years ago and prior to your birth. In that state, you were bereft of the three states of waking, deep sleep, and knowingness. You should abide in that state during meditation. How does one avoid going into samadhi in this meditation? Going into samadhi or coming out of samadhi are not your qualities. You are beyond qualities. My question is how to avoid it. Going into and coming out of a samadhi are qualities like all other qualities of the three gunas. And you do not try to avoid samadhi. It is the natural play of the three gunas. Samadhi will be there, but you, the Absolute, are not in the samadhi. I used to have these tendencies, so my guru forbade me meditation and observation. But could you tell me how and where you were introduced to the knowledge you are? Did your guru tell you that? Where and how did the union of the beingness and the Absolute take place? The question never did arise. One ignorant person can tell another ignorant person anything, but that one who recognizes what the ignorance is should be considered as the knower, the jnani. Many people presume themselves to be jnanis, but they are ignorant only. One person says, I am knowledgeable. Another says, I know, but both are ignorant. The waking state is followed by deep sleep, and deep sleep is followed by the waking state, and so on goes the cycle. This cycle constitutes the beingness. You must be very alert, as at times when someone aims a rifle at you, and you are trying to avoid the bullet. It is not child's play to see through the ignorance. I will try. Are you going to ask questions from without the three states or within the three states? By using the three states. Then what's the use? Earlier you wanted to stay here for 3 weeks. Do you want to stay for that period? Is it necessary? Earlier Maharaj asked me a question and I answered, but once my purpose is achieved, I may go. Is there anything left that you have not accomplished? And what do you mean by purpose? May I know how to deal with the purpose completely and consciously? The process of attaining the purpose is within the three gunas, whereas the purpose itself is beyond the three gunas. The process of attaining the purpose then disappears? The meditator involved in that process is not the real one, but the target is the real. This book, this is the final obstacle. Second visitor, what is the value of a book? A book is valuable to its reader provided he is more ignorant than its author. The author has very beautifully written ignorance in his book, and we are so engrossed in it that we go to sleep. But after reading that book, many have come to you. Why have they come? It was to get direction for their meditation. With the transcendence of the knowledge I am, the Absolute prevails. The state is called Parabrahman, while the knowledge I am is termed Brahman. This knowledge I am, or the beingness, is illusion only. Therefore, when Brahman is transcended, only the Parabrahman is, in which there is not even a trace of the knowledge I am. When those three states, waking, deep sleep, and knowingness, were not there, could there be beingness? Why? In that state did your beingness arise? Would there be any necessity for beingness in the Parabrahman state? In the absence of beingness, did you see the sun, the moon, and the stars in the firmament? In that state, was there any benefit from the sun, the moon, and the stars? The beingness is a superimposition, a cloak of illusion over the Absolute. In other words, the beingness, which is the very first and primary concept I am, is itself the conceptual illusion. This manifest world is the dynamic play of the five elements, in that there is no scope for an individual. A diamond radiates light all around. It is radiance itself. In deeper meditation, you will realize that, like the brilliance emanating from a diamond in all directions, the manifest world emanates out of you. It is your effulgence only. Like an old-fashioned cafe having mirrors on the walls, which reflect your manifold images, the whole universe manifests in that principle, which is termed beingness or birth. This beingness illumines all that exists, which means the entire universe manifests as the body of the beingness. On a television screen you see different forms, images, and landscapes, but they are all the expression or play of the tube's electron beams only. Similarly, the entire manifest world of your purview is the product of your beingness. When you go into deep quietude, after thorough comprehension of these talks, you will observe that in the knowledge you are, innumerable universes and cosmoses latently exist. Maharaj, pointing to the foreigners, these are seekers of the true knowledge, while the local people follow devotion to a god so that their mundane needs are provided. I have therefore the highest regard for the foreigners because whatever they undertake they see it through to the end. I admire their perseverance. To come here, many of us have left all the profound acharyas completely. Such spiritual personages do not belong to any country. They are the product of the five elemental play. People take birth and die in the play of the consciousness. In the next 100 years, all these people will die and a fresh crop of visitors will arrive in the world, in a continuous process. This, too, is the play of the five elements. Many acharyas have come and gone, but none could bring about even a little change in the process of creation, preservation, and destruction, the play of the five elements. Not only acharyas, even great incarnations like Rama, Krishna, and others could not do it. The same can be said of rishis, sages, and siddha purushas, the souls highly evolved spiritually. Inexorably, the great drama goes on, although it is governed by such an odious principle as one species preys upon another species. There are organizations to prevent cruelty to animals, but they only prolong the life and sufferings of animals. Could they bring to a stop animal creation? As a result of this creation, both the human beings and animals suffer in this world. Is there any progress in family planning either in human beings or in animals in totality? What authority does one have about oneself? People have no authority whatsoever to interfere in this grand drama of the five elements, to effect any change, because their primary nature ever remains the same. January 15th, 1980.